I hereby call to order this meeting of the Triton Regional School Committee on April 8th, 2026 at 7 p.m. I'm Linda Lukovsky, Chair of the School Committee. I want to welcome everyone here tonight. A reminder that this meeting is being audio and video recorded. I'm going to read our vision statement. We are a community of learners known for our unwavering commitment to meeting the needs of all students. Through the adoption of best practices and our active partnership with families and the wider community who are united in supporting the development of engaged, successful, responsible, resilient learners. Students will be well prepared to be ethical, empathetic, and contributing citizens. Can we please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Usually, the last few years, we've had drop-in sessions for the budget. This year, we're going to have it on Monday, April 27th at 2:30, Tuesday, April 28th at 10:30, and Wednesday, April 29th at 6:30. So if any members would like to be part of that, please email me by Friday so that we can make sure we have enough people to be within that. Also, I want to thank our legislator, Kirsten Kastner, for inviting Triton to come and speak before the Ways and Means Committee about Chapter 70 and how the state isn't fulfilling their commitments to funding our schools. I especially want to thank Owen, Narissa, and Brian for taking the time to go there. If you guys are familiar with the weekly Scoop with the Soup, there is a whole section on that, and I highly recommend you to look at it because it was very emotional to see these guys talking to the State House and all the people that were there, because now that we've got 85% of the districts in the same situation we are, maybe we'll get some movement on it. The next item is a portrait of a learner. We're welcoming students here tonight, the final of our 5 schools and 5 roles of a portrait of a learner being celebrated this year. This month we celebrate students who exemplified the March Portrait of a Learner role focus, which was Innovator. Principal Kelly, can you please come up and tell us about your student?
Good evening, committee, and good evening, families. So I'm excited this month to be able to share about what Triton High School did to celebrate innovation as part of our Portrait of a Learner experience. For our sophomore students, one of the activities that we've done now, this is our 2nd year completing it, is a design, build, innovation challenge. And so what we focused on this year is having our sophomore class split into 11 different groups, building and designing their own water filtration systems. So one of the issues that comes up as one of the UN sustainability goals is around clean water and having clean water in various places across the world. So our students learned just a small bit about this challenge and problem that presents itself both at times in our community, but in the world at large. They were assigned to their groups of about 10 students. And then they had to undergo the challenge of looking at a mound of supplies in the middle of the gymnasium, determining what's there, what they might want to use, and go about working with their group to navigate how do we construct a water filtration system to take what was a tub of muddy, murky water and distill it so we would be left with clean water at the end. And I think when we start this challenge, both of the last 2 years, but certainly this year, there was a lot of looks on the student faces of Mr. Kelly's crazy in the center of the room, that pile of muck is never going to look clean. And as they learned a little bit, as they researched a little bit, and then as they started to design and prototype, we quickly found that our students were able to build and design. We've got 8 exceptional students that are here this evening for recognition. When we went through the process, one of the things I asked the staff members that were present at the beginning was look for, not just in your own group, but in other groups as well, who are the students that are coming forward as leaders? Who are the students that are helping their groups to organize, to plan, to think about what steps they might need? Who are willing to prototype, to see something through, and then completely change course. I know for at least one of our groups, we got bad advice from Doc, and what was you saying? Where one of the, as they went through, the water came out black the first time, and was, the charcoal was in the wrong place, and they had to go back and completely restart. For 2 of our groups, our final 2 groups, their water was almost crystal clear. So in second place was Jacob's group, and in first place was Stefine's group. And the winning design actually did a double filtration. It wasn't just one layer of filtration. They decided that that wasn't going to be good enough, and they were going to go back through and do a double filtration. And so we really had some interesting and creative solutions to the problem. One of the things that I really liked about having the high school be last and be able to focus on being innovators was that to complete this challenge, and when we think about our portrait of a learner, it wasn't just one of the dispositions that our students had to exemplify to be successful. So throughout that challenge, we had to see our students be communicative. They had to organize and work and operate within our groups. They had to be collaborative. The idea of the challenge itself was about what might be needed for whether it's our local community or our international community centered around the UN Global Sustainability Goals. They had to problem solve. They had to look at the supplies that were present, figure out what they had, what they needed, what they might need to modify. I didn't say that we also had our 2 maintenance workers who are on staff helping the students to at a cut station. So if students needed to cut supplies, if they needed to drill holes in something, if they needed to modify the supplies that they had, our maintenance workers were there not to do for them, but to oversee them to make sure that they did it safely. And we saw our students time and time again, but specifically this group of 8 students, really exemplify those dispositions throughout the course of the afternoon and really highlight all the things that we've been working on in classrooms and in other spaces throughout. And so I'm incredibly proud of what we saw from our sophomore class. I want to say that the final products, from the dirtiest water that was left behind to the cleanest water that was left behind, all likely surpassed what we saw last year from our sophomores last year, our now current junior class. And I think a big testament to that is the organization and leadership of the students that are present here in this room. I'm incredibly proud, and I'm excited to recognize our 8 students that we have. So, and call them up. So I've got Ari, Tafine, Sarah, Declan, Noah, Jasenia, Violet, and Jacob. And can we get a big round of applause for all 8? Jacob. And can we get all of our students over on the side here?
Wait, there's one more.
right over here for a photo all together. We're gonna
Want to?
Thank you.
I like the side eye when it's like, oh wait, what did I just stay for? And when's the intermission when I can politely leave?
Next item is oral communications from the public. Members of the public may address the committee for up to 3 minutes longer with the permission of the chairperson. The committee will not engage in discussion on the topics raised during public comment, but may choose to add the topic to a future agenda. This agenda segment will be limited to 15 minutes. Are there any members of the public who wish to address the committee? Okay, seeing none. The next item is the consent agenda. The consent agenda contains 2 donations. Thank you to Amy Chung for a $1,000 donation to cover musical instrument repairs, and to the Triton Education Foundation for rugs for the Viking Den, valued at $524.75. There are 3 overnight or out-of-state field trip permission requests on this month's agenda. One is for planning permission for Salisbury Elementary 6th grade to attend Ecology Camp October 19th through the 23rd, 2026. One is for Newberry Elementary 6th grade to attend Ecology Camp on November 16th through the 20th, 2026. And the final one is for the Triton Middle School 8th grade to go to Philadelphia and New York City, April 7th through the 10th, 2026. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Make the motion?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? The
Can I
next
just-
item,
Can I just add a statement about the obvious? That trip left yesterday. So just, I said, yes, you can go. We had a little snafu with getting this paperwork back last month. And so you are approving it when they're already en route.
the next item is student representative report. I'd like to invite Student Representative Foster Campbell to present his monthly report.
Hello, everybody. What's the happenings is we got the quarter swapping, so no one's going into new classes, but we do have some seniors going out on internship, so they will only be back for AP classes and such. Again, with a new quarter, there's the new sports kind of start up, even though it kind of started third quarter, but this is when they really get going. Prom tickets are now on sale if anybody's interested in purchasing. But recently we did have a sad time for many, as Mr. Boyle did pass recently. but it was handled nicely with emotional support dogs coming in and counselors being available. Other than that, I don't have much else to add, unless anybody has any.
Does anybody have any questions for Foster? Thank you, Foster. Next item is new business. Would any members of the committee like to raise new business to be discussed in a future meeting? Paul?
I'd be interested in hearing how many hours our students are spending on required work that are on screens in a week, in school, between in-school and out-of-school time. If the committee would be interested as well.
Thank you, Paul. The next item, committee reorganization planning. Each April, in preparation for reorganization after the May elections, we have a discussion regarding the members' eligibility and willingness to serve as officers in the coming year. This is just a discussion. The actual nominations and votes would happen in May. The eligibility prerequisites per our district policies are attached to the agendas. I'd like to go around the table and have each member say if they are eligible and if they are willing to serve in the various officer positions for the coming year. Any members new to the committee in May can nominate and vote on officers, but based on the policies, they are not eligible to serve themselves in their first year on the committee. So starting with Erin.
Sorry, I just wanted to make sure I refreshed my qualifications there. So I think I qualify for secretary, and I'm trying to remember if I qualify. Did these change from before? It said that you had to be a chair of a committee for one term. I think I'm qualified for all of them.
Can you say that again? No, they haven't changed.
Okay, I see.
I'm not sure what you were asking what they were before.
No, I see the sentence, the part of the sentence I was looking for.
Okay.
At this point in time, I finally qualify for all 3 positions. Be more than willing to take over the secretary duties if that is something that the committee is interested in having me do.
So just so I'm making sure I get this down correct, eligible for all 3, willing for only secretary position?
I'd be willing for others. I would not want to take on the chair position right now because I still have I have a senior graduating right now, and then I have another senior next year, and I would kind of like to be a little bit present in their last tenure at the school. So I would not like, I want to try and make sure that I can be as available as possible for them.
Fair. Just wanted to make sure I have the right information. Thank you.
Owen?
I am not eligible for any at this time. Safe.
Caitlin? Yes.
I am eligible for all 3. I will do whatever the will of the committee is, but I will say before that, you 2 are doing a lovely job, and I don't think any changes should be made there.
Paul?
I am eligible for all 3. I would serve if required.
Matt?
At the advice of counsel, I assert my Fifth Amendment privilege.
What was that?
I'm not sure if I'm eligible, but I think I have my plate full. I'm good.
Matt, you're eligible for all 3. I'll just let you know.
Can't hear you. I'm sorry, what?
Narissa?
I am eligible for all 3. I am willing to do clerk or vice chair. My family has made me promise not to be chair again. So
I am qualified for all 3. I'm willing to do whatever the committee wants me to do. So with that said, going into next month, we'll have the same discussion. Okay. The next, oh, sorry, Foster.
I was wondering about bringing on like a freshman for a or like a student advisor to like come with me. So when I leave after next year, do something like that, so they could like co-counsel and see what it's like. I don't know if that's possible.
I have asked that it be a freshman myself, but what I was told from the advisors was a lot of times it's tougher for those students to make it to the meetings because they would have to be driven by their parents. So that was, but I mean, I'm not against it at all.
Yeah, and I think it's working with the student council. So if there could be someone, especially you have one more year. So if someone were to come sit with you and kind of do it in tandem with you for a year and then take over when you leave a year from now, that'd be great. I think we've always loved the idea of having two.
Absolutely.
We've talked about rotation. We've talked about two sitting at the table. So definitely, if you want to talk to
Yeah, so
Scolio
I'm
and
not
the council.
against it. That was just what the advisors of the student council had said.
I'll have to ask.
I also just want to make sure that we're not closing the door on anyone else that's interested in it that's not a freshman to do it. I just want to make sure that there is an opportunity if someone wants to raise their hand that's going to be an incoming junior or an incoming sophomore, that they still have the same opportunity. Not say that we only are interested in a freshman.
There, and I believe you can go all the way down to middle school if you want. I know some districts have a representative from each school past the elementary schools. So that's also a possibility. Or, I mean, there's really no limitation on how many you can have. You just have to have one. So meeting that quota now currently, barely.
The next item is the regional agreement. Next steps. In both school committee and district communications committee meetings this year, discussions have touched on the possibility of considering amendments to the regional agreement. These have mostly been side notes on bigger conversations. As this committee knows, the regional agreement is between the three towns and forms the regional district. But in most recent amendments in 2006 and 2021, the school committee and district administration has played a strong research and in some cases an advisory role in the process. I wanted to schedule a formal item here tonight to open a discussion among the committee members on this. The amendment process is long and can be arduous. So this would be at least a multi-year process, with the earliest possible timing being spring 2027 language votes that would need to pass at all three town meetings. The DESE Commissioner's approval due by December 31st, 2027, and an effective date of July 1st, 2028. The reality is that the discussion phase on what should be included in the preview of the language by DESE Legal has taken years itself in the last two amendment cycles. Before it even goes to town vote, I'll open this to the floor, but I would be interested in hearing from you regarding if and how you'd like to proceed and what role you believe the committee should take so that the committee officer, future committee officers, have your guidance. So I know that we have discussed several things with the regional agreement in district communication and here. Again, the big piece is that the towns have to be willing to engage. Go ahead, Paul.
Right. I guess the way I feel about this is we have a regional agreement that governs our building structures and the way the budget is allocated between the towns, and those impact our thinking. If there are other items in there that, impact the budget, then I feel like we need to be approaching the towns and saying, what can you guys agree to that helps the funding situation, helps the budget situation, rather than coming in with saying, here are specific things we want you to agree to. It's like, what can you do? What are you willing to do as towns? And approach it that way. I don't know. We've talked about consolidating schools. I've heard about asking the towns to take over ownership of the buildings. I've heard, you know, we have the formula, the alternative assessment formulas. Those are things we've talked about, but what else is out there? And I think just saying, we need to be creative and come up with something. That's my thoughts.
Yep. And, you know, we'll bring this up at the District Communication Committee again.
So last time, we ended up actually taking a subcommittee and having them devote time to sort of a full rehash of the, like going through section by section and talking about like what can you do differently, what could be updated, what do other regional agreements look like for this section, all that stuff. I don't know if we want to get that detailed this time. But that is an option that's out there. It can definitely stay more kind of surface. One of my personal opinions is that if you don't know sort of what other people are doing and what's working for them, it's hard to imagine what you could be capable in your own sort of structures that you have there. But obviously that's a big investment to put in without getting some buy-in first. I guess, yeah, I don't have a super strong feeling on either of those other than I'd like to have buy-in first, and I don't know what that process looks like going down the road. But I'm not sure if that's something that if the committee wants to sort of pick and choose the things that it would recommend looking at and doing some research up front to try and show what might be out there, or if this should be a situation where sort of let's throw open the doors and go through the whole thing soup to nuts, knowing also that DESI Legal will be going through the whole thing soup to nuts and will force us to change some things as we go through, as we learned last time, where they were just like essentially ripping it apart once we got to that stage.
Narissa, can I ask what the point of failure was in that last discussion?
Yeah, points. So first of all, I would consider it a low point with the towns that we introduced those discussions. And there were, I mean, I don't think it was a bad thing that there were a lot of things up front just rejected out of hand as far as how things should work. Right? So sometimes it's easy, like this is not going to fly, you just eliminate it from the conversation, you don't move it forward. We had sort of a key group that handled the main language discussions, and especially as it started coming back from DESI. And then we split off working groups that looked at the landlord-tenant agreement, which we haven't talked about in a while, actually, which is, there's no discussion really in the regional agreement that has specifics about how large repairs are handled at the elementary schools, which are owned by the towns. So landlord-tenant is a way that another district had taken and essentially set aside a separate agreement that said, agreed between chairpersons of the Board of Selectmen and the district, rather than through the whole town meeting process, we're going to have essentially a set of protocols or, handbook of, if something goes wrong, this is who you're notifying, and when they're expecting to be notified, it will be within this time frame. If it's over this amount, then it'll be handled by the towns. If it's over that amount, it's handled by the district. This is how we handle cumulative things, which I think has been one of the struggles this year, is like when it's $3,000 here, $4,000 here, but you've said your limit is, $10,000, and you're doing 4 of these repairs a year, and over the year you've spent, $15,000, so you're past that, but every single instance is under that cap. Like, how do you handle that? Brian probably he did the most work on that, so I'm sure there were more things in there that I'm not remembering, but.
Yeah, I think the key is there are just so many complexities.
Yes.
And it all coming back to, on any given year, any of the things we were talking about would likely disadvantage a town or two towns and advantage a town or two towns. So the question about the point of failure, I mean, I joke, but I mean, it was multiple points, right? It is
Yes.
not, there was no single indicator. I mean, there were frustrations along the way with DESI literally suggesting language, and then when we gave them back their same language, they suggested edits to their language, right? So I mean, literally, I mean, so they were the routine is that routine? Maybe not routine. The regular frustrations with that type of stuff, but I think the big concepts are, it's money, it's buildings, it's, programs, and it's personal. I think specifically for the 3 elementary schools, obviously a regional campus is different. So, I don't know, I guess I had this thought the other day, having even mentioned it to Linda as the chair. I think for us to make any meaningful, so North Shore Consortium has been looking at Recovery High School, and it's an unbelievable challenge because there's no state funding. Huge need, no good funding structure. And so we as a board contracted with Rennie Center to come in, and you can, you could do a contract with the Rennie Center for $500,000. You could do a contract with Rennie Center for $15,000, $20,000, $25,000. And I just wonder if we were to bring in an agency that understands regions, the law, and could walk us through. I wouldn't want to do that as a district if we don't have the commitment of the towns to come to the table. But if we said, hey, we would take a vote to allocate out of stabilization, whatever, and dedicate money to that process. Wouldn't want to do that unless that we as a 3-town region committed to some actions coming out of it. But if the charge was to come up with some actionable, are there enough pros that we can say this is really beneficial and model things out.
Yeah,
thought.
Mars offers that as a service too, which might be more helpful. Yeah, and I don't want to say like nothing good came through because there was a lot of updating that got done. We could have gotten at some point into a prolonged legal battle over the fact that the old regional agreement actually didn't provide for a second approval of overrides to pass one of our budgets. So it simply said the town meeting vote was the vote, right? Yeah, regardless of whether an override passed or not, which would have failed if it failed, right? It technically fails the vote backward. Right? So like there were things that got addressed in that that could have been headaches and were headaches that were prevented, but they were much lower stakes than those 2 big items.
Well, I think we hit upon the point of failure, which is the buy-in piece. Like to reopen this, if the towns are not willing to come to the table with an open mind and an open heart to move forward, then it's, I won't say waste of time, because you could then find those things within the larger discussion, but the hot ticket items, the money, the things that get personal, those are not going to be resolved unless we, 3 towns, 1 school committee can come to the table willing to make those changes. So I guess that would be where kind of a giant red flag for me in this discussion is when you open that regional agreement, if there isn't buy-in, if there isn't a willingness to move forward or move on or actually dig into the money, budget cycle, and those things to make formative changes, will there be a positive outcome? And that's kind of a red flag for me to open a discussion where the possibility of a less than positive outcome or a less than calm outcome, I should say, that's always concerning to me when you open something as big as this. So that would be my big concern is there a way to move forward where people have an open mind, open heart, and then we can get somewhere as a community in a positive place? And if not, do we dare open it?
I just want to make a clarification, or just publicly making sure that everybody's on the same page. We would be acting as facilitators for the towns to have the discussion and not making decisions, correct?
Usually, we would be advisory for them. Like, we would bring up some subjects that they should probably look at and see if they're willing to look at it.
So if we were going to act as facilitators, if we had the buy-in and the willingness to go forward in doing that, I think it's probably better to take the approach that we're doing it in chunks so that it's not overwhelming, whether it's separate subcommittees or kind of like policy and advocacy does. It says we're focusing on this section at this point in time and not moving on until we've cleared whatever we were going to take a look at, or decided that they're not willing to make any adjustments in that section, and make it into more digestible pieces so it doesn't seem so overwhelming. And that's probably the approach I would take. But like everyone else has said, if there's no willingness there to actually go through and take a really good look at this and try to make the effort to make adjustments that are beneficial to everyone, then I don't see us spinning our wheels trying to force them into a situation where the outcome is not going to be good.
I think the last time is we looked at the regional agreement and took out different pieces of it and asked them if, like, it was the alternative assessment, it was the handing Salisbury Elementary back to Salisbury, and the landlord-tenant agreements. So that's what we can do too, is look at what sections of the regional agreement they would like to look at. And I know that there were subcommittees for the alternative assessment. I know that some of the towns feel that it's been exhausted, everything that could be done in that, but to me, you always keep trying at it to see if you can come up with something that's going to work. But it's, again, a willingness of the towns to continue with that format of trying to find something that worked for all three. And like Narissa said, we tried to go as trying to make it the simplest way. And they found that it's not easily done the simplest way. You may have to go at it at a different, more complicated angle, but then trying to simplify it to explain to people what it means if you have that alternative assessment. But again, it comes down to the towns working with us, if that's what they want to do. I mean, the school committee's willing to facilitate, have certain separate subcommittees for whatever it is of the regional agreement they would like to look at.
I'm going to just tie back into what Paul said first, I think, which is, I think the first thing, my personal opinion, is that Linda should be able to walk in there and say in a DCC meeting, we want you to consider opening the regional agreement. As our three towns, we want you to consider going through the amendment process. And it's a big process and it's a long process, and we'll do what we can to support you. But we want you to go through this process because I don't think we have a choice right now. Like, it has to be done to make any major structural changes, and we hit the point where we need structural changes. So I don't know if everyone else is on board with that, because that is a strong statement, I feel like, to say we want you to do this, even though it's simple words.
I don't know that I would open the agreement at this time based on things that I'm seeing at other regional agreements that are being discussed. So unless they come to us, I would just leave it alone.
Well, within the regional agreement is when we have to come up with a budget. And I know that at least the people of the towns have asked for them to be able to speak sooner than when we're voting on the. So I think that's within the regional agreement of at least trying to change that.
Are you talking about like a hearing with the public?
Well, having us try and figure out once, I don't know what I'm trying to say. Wrap my brain around this.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the dates that are set, right, are the tentative budget and the final budget. And then on the front side, we're sort of constricted by the governor's budget being released, right? So, I mean, we could sort of throw that out the window and say we're going to start talking and planning early, but then the reality is you're going to have to entirely rethink that when the governor's budget comes out, because
But we can go back to what we used to do with assumptions of numbers, unless we don't want to come up with assumptions.
you can do assumptions, they're never correct.
Right.
So our numbers, like, we can get pretty close, we know what the contracts are, right? But how that's gonna be divvied up between the towns, we have no
Right,
idea
but we
on
at
that,
least
and that's.
would know at least the number. I mean, we don't know what town's gonna be hit the hardest, but you would at least have a assumption of what the number's gonna be.
Yes,
So I mean, if we have those numbers and we put up a nice big board that says assumptions, that these are not the numbers, to start having conversations earlier. If that's the will of the committee, I know that we heard that throughout the budget season of having maybe even the public hearings sooner. Go ahead, Paul.
I don't believe we can have the public hearing sooner because of MGL, but you could have multiple. I mean, that was the point that Paul raised before, but it's hard because you just don't have a lot of information.
I was just going to say, I feel like we're mixing two agenda items right now, and I think that question that Matt started asking, or answering rather, do we as a committee want to ask you to ask the towns to open the regional agreement? I think this other piece falls into that, but I also think it's a little bit separate, because we can make our own process within the constraints of the regional agreement or not, but the regional agreement is the budget. I don't know. I just feel like we're mixing two items right now. I'd like clarity on that question, whether we're asking them to open the regional agreement or not before we get into what our budget process is.
Let me tie it back and say there's nothing in the regional agreement that would preclude those changes.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's just, I mean, we have a DCC meeting at the end of this month. How do we want to go into that DCC meeting? Are we not asking them to open a regional agreement? Are we not asking them that we'd like to start budget discussions earlier? I mean, what is the will of the committee as to what we're doing when we go to that DCC meeting?
The budget process is on us, though. We have certain dates that are part of the regional agreement, but outside of those 2 dates, right? Is it 2? 2. Outside of those 2 dates, we do not need to go before the DCC to make those changes. Like, we don't need to ask them. If we can say, like, we are going to make changes to the budget process based on things that we have learned in the past couple of years. I'm not saying that's what we should, but I'm just saying, like, we could do that. But for the regional agreement, we can only facilitate that discussion. We can only ask them to open it. So there's only really one part of this that we have kind of the power to say, like, we are going to open discussions to make a formative change to our budget process. Your thoughts when we're talking to the towns. But as far as the opening the regional agreement, the question is, do they want to open the regional agreement? We can ask them to, but do they want to open it? And then which parts do they want to open? I guess that would be my question for them before we say we want you to open this. My question would be, do the 3 towns want to open the regional agreement? And what things do you want to look into? Rather than us asking them, it would be more like, is this something you want to do, and have them bring it forward? Because we can only facilitate that discussion. We can't ask, like, we can't do much. They have to want to do it. So I guess the question should be in reverse. When we go to the DCC meeting, do you, the 3 towns, want to open the regional agreement? We are willing to discuss it. We would like to to do it. That's, I guess the question is, do we want to have it? But the question is, do they want to do it? Because they could come to us in DCC and say they want to open the regional agreement. I'm just trying to figure out that balance right there, because that's the question. Do they want to do it? And I haven't heard beyond the budget process and that, I don't know if I've heard that they want to, they do? One town. Okay. So it would be up to them. They can come to us on DCC and ask to open the regional agreement and have those discussions. I'd rather focus where we can make a change forward in our process.
Does anybody else have anything else on the?
I guess my response to that is what Narissa said also, is that our budget increases are on level services are big enough and in the foreseeable future look to maintain to be big enough where we are unlikely to be able to maintain level services year over year. Like we're just going to be continuing to make cuts off of that unless we do something structural. And as a member of the committee constrained by that regional agreement, like, I don't like the situation we're in, and I would like to at least try to say to the towns, we need your assistance here in this thing that you can do that we can't. We can do what we can do, and we should do what we can within our budget and our timeline, our regional agreement, and our legal constraints. But they're the next level up. And us approaching them and saying, we need changes here, or we think changes here could be impactful, is different than waiting for them to come to us.
I think we already asked them to kind of make it, so I agree with you. I think from my point, we've already asked them to do it, so to keep kind of going back and being, will you please do this? Can we please do this? It has to come from them at some point, because we've asked, we've had these discussions, we've gone back the last few years and said, like, what is going to happen? This is what's happening. This is why it's happening. So I think, for us, we're at the point where they need to want to do it and want to open it. So my response was kind of along those lines. I agree with you. I would love to have it open, but we've asked, we've talked about it. I would love to talk about the budget in a way that we could make some meaningful movements forward, but it goes back to, we can't make meaningful movement forward with the regional agreement without the towns choosing to buy into it. So we're stuck. And the things that we can talk about are that budget piece and how we make it a better process for the families and what we can control. But I do agree with you 100%. We can't force the towns to want to do it. And I feel like we've asked a lot over the years.
Could I hop in, add something?
We haven't asked?
What?
No, Narissa's saying no.
No?
No. She was saying, I think we've asked a lot over the years, and I don't feel like there's been this moment where we've said, now let's go, right? I think it's been a lot of like, if we want to change that, then the regional agreement needs to be opened. But I'm not sure we've ever had that moment where we're like, hey, are we going to open it or not? Because this is how we make structural changes, and structural changes are the only way we're making a big difference. Sorry, Rich, I didn't mean
No, I was just going to add that, regional agreement aside, I know that's kind of an arduous undertaking, but, new guy hat here on. The one thing that I heard from the families and the kids who came to talk about the budget was that they just frankly didn't have a voice earlier. And there's nothing in the regional agreement that precludes that. And, what I have seen work in other districts, both in Massachusetts and New Hampshire, is sending out a budget survey to families early in the year, around October, before the holidays, having, almost like a budget open house prior to the holidays, before we get the governor's budget, that allows families and students and staff to come in and give their thoughts on, what they think the major priorities should be. And of course, we don't have the budget from the governor yet, but we'll have somewhat of an idea of what things might look like based on what the current year is. So if we know, okay, this is how this year went, we're obviously not going to end up with, you know, this golden pot of money at the end of the rainbow here going into the next year. But what are our priorities as a community? Getting that front-loaded so that when that governor's budget does drop, we have all of those priorities in the back of our mind, or at the front of our mind, rather, when we create that first pass at the budget, I think might help out a little bit with the community. I don't think that gets to the heart of everything you're trying to solve, but it could be a step in the right direction.
And it would at least let families and students know their voices being heard.
No, without a doubt, but I think you have to, you almost have to pry them out, right? You have to schedule a specific event. This is a night for the community to come in and talk about the budget. It's not a school committee meeting. It is literally a roundtable. We've done something similar in Salisbury, where we talked through the Chapter 70 process and we talked through the budget process, but we didn't really give folks an opportunity to say like what their priorities were in terms of funding. So I think if we open that up, perhaps, you know, throw some food out or something like that, just to get people to come. Food always makes me come. He's always laughing at me for that. Just something to think about. But the surveys, you know, they're hit or miss. But I've seen some good feedback come back in budget surveys before. I've seen some really nasty feedback come back as well. But I think you need both sides of that in order to prepare a budget that meets the needs of the community.
Thank you, Rich.
Can I ask, does it, when you get to the point where there are cuts, because this is what I heard last year, which is what I struggle with, because I don't think you can move out of it, is they were blindsided by the cuts themselves. So even if you know the budget priorities, like I've weighed in and said that, you know, STEM and arts are important to me, what I heard the visceral reaction to, where people said like, this is the thing that how did I not know this 2 weeks ago, was that, you know, whose position it was, or, you know?
Yeah, and I don't think that we can, obviously in some positions, it's always going to come down to whose position, because there's only one or two people in that position, so it's pretty telling, right? But typically we wouldn't say this person, it would be this type of position. But you know, I think perhaps, you know, like the VPA, for instance, let's look at that. If we know it's going to be a difficult budget year, and we know that, you know, enrollment is down in the VPA classes, I don't think that's something that we need to, you know, shy away from sharing with families really early in the year, to just be honest with them and say, hey, you know, enrollment in this area is down. If there is a place to cut, unfortunately, like this is where it's going to be. I think just that transparency might be helpful. And I don't think it's anyone has tried to not be transparent, right? I think it's just maybe try something a little bit different.
Well, and I think the budget process is very opaque, and to the point of people feeling like they were blindsided. I feel that it's somewhat the role of this committee to not just pass a budget, but also to communicate that to the towns, right? And so, sure, people don't know where to look, but I think it would be helpful in that case to have a roundtable where, even if you're just, you know, walking around in the dark, you could at least tell people, like, you know, we get the governor's budget, you know, this week in January, and this is when you should be looking to know what kind of cuts we'll be doing. And so they'll be at least prepared for the possibility, even if the cuts themselves are unforeseeable, they don't understand the process.
And as a former theater kid, I'm happy to say this. You know, I wouldn't have a problem being very frank with families, and this is completely hypothetical, what I'm going to throw out there, is, you know, if we're spending, let's say, $300,000 on staffing for fine arts, but there's only 30 kids enrolled in the program. I think that's a reality that the community needs to know sooner rather than later, so that they know that the decisions that are being made is not just, we're going to cut the arts, right? That kind of knee-jerk reaction. We're going to cut X because of, you know, the reasoning. We're spending this amount, but we're just not getting the enrollment. And that could be forensics, it could be, you know, whatever course or program that happens to be in that position. But I think communicating it early is the important part.
So I think
Do you think that could potentially have a negative effect on morale?
I think it could, but I mean, personally, having, you know, been a teacher and been a principal and been a parent and been a school board member, I think I would much rather know as close to the truth as possible sooner.
I think with like the morale, like that's gonna come out at some point. We're at some point through the next year, it's gonna be like we're going to have to cut no matter what. It doesn't. I don't think it's necessarily a big deal when people have that realization, and if people have that realization earlier, they can be like, okay, I need to show up to X, Y, and Z meetings, and really write it in their schedule and such.
I think the meetings that we had to explain Chapter 70 maybe can be opened up to what possibly Rich is talking about, where we talk about Chapter 70 and how the assessments get assessed to the towns. And then telling them when the governor's budget comes out so that they know. I think the more we can make the community understand how our budget is put together, and then have them be able to talk about it, might be a good way to start to do this, maybe doing one in each of the 3 towns, you know.
Do you think this is something that maybe potentially we could have short snippet videos made and always available, whether it's the budget director or the superintendent, or maybe you engage the VTV classes and ask them to learn and explain and make the videos for you, or have Narissa sit down and make a couple videos based on her background in education so that we always have it available, because I do feel like we talk certain elements of this a lot at our meetings, and I understand that we need to find a better way to connect to the community, but I'm worried that we're gonna, I'm not saying I don't think we should do it, but I am worried that we're gonna add so many more pieces into what this committee does, and that we may not have the return on it with having people come to understand that sort of thing. I would like to entertain and see what it would look like and make sure that we make adjustments along the way if we're going to have listening sessions and roundtables, and but also trying to figure out maybe another way that we can reach out, whether it is with the video or it is with some sort of communications program that we can highlight some of these things where someone doesn't have to make a commitment to come sit around at a table as the way of getting the information. So maybe like a twofold program.
So we're getting way off topic, but I'd like to say, first of all, I've already made those videos. So you want 3 minutes on Chapter 70? I got you. But second of all, I think we should put this on a future agenda. I missed the new business bring up here, but if we can go back to that. I think we should put on a future agenda just a quick discussion, and I think almost this might bear off like a small working group of the school committee to have 3 people be able to take a sidebar and do a lot of this brainstorming and then put together a proposal on how things can change. I would say that should also include the towns. This is not a district solo expedition, so I think that needs to be included there as well. But But I think like down the road, this should be a discussion point on exactly how we move this out of a full committee, 10-minute discussion and into let's come up with some real proposal on the side with a group that can kind of sit down and work together on that. But tonight, we're talking about regional agreements. So,
Well, we'll just have to present it at a DCC and see if the towns are engaged. I think that's where we have to start. And if they say no, then we're done. And if they feel that they're interested, then we can give them some thoughts and some guidance and advisory. Does that sound fine with the committee?
Can I say one last thing? Just a reminder that you're the gatekeepers of the regional agreement. So if a city or a town is not part of a region, it starts with town government, select board, city council, or whatever. Towns come together, form a regional agreement, elect a public body, and then it becomes under the auspices. As a regional school district, any regional district amendment or district regional agreement amendment starts with you, is then passed off to town meeting and then to the commissioner. So just to make sure that, yes, we need the towns and select boards to be part of the process, but it can't happen without you as the school committee.
Right. But that's what we have to start the conversation to see if they're willing. We'll drive it, but they got to be willing to get on. Okay. Anything else on that? The next item is the FY27 budget development. The superintendent is going to provide an update.
He's not, because there's nothing else to update you on. We put this as a, matters arising. There is nothing new. Same thing, we had this on the Finance Committee agenda for the month of March. And we will again in April for anything that arises, but there is nothing new. Our understanding is all three towns are moving forward without overrides. So we'll be putting our budget with recommendations to approve for all three town meetings, and then we would have town meetings on May 4th and 5th in Rowley and Newbury respectively, and then May 18th in Salisbury. So when you gather for your next meeting on May 20th, we will know the outcome of that budget at that point.
The next item is the Student Opportunity Act plan updates. Dr. Anna Bates is going to provide an update on the Student Opportunity Act plan.
Thank you. So every 3 years, we're tasked with developing a plan ensuring that every student has access to high-quality learning. And the two groups that we have sort of targeted in this work are students with disabilities and students with low income. So this is just an update on some of the work that we've been doing this year and then some of the progress that we have made. So one of the areas that was included in our original plan was focused on inclusive curriculum adoption processes for grades, middle school and high school mathematics. So over 2 years we explored and then piloted, and this year we have implemented big ideas in middle school and high school mathematics. So that is moving from our sort of inclusive adoption processes into supporting curriculum implementation. So that is one change that we've seen. We have had a number of activities for educators and administrators in supporting elementary ELA with a particular focus on writing, as well as supporting implementation of the new secondary mathematics curriculum. Another area that we focused on is supporting the collaborative teaching and co-teaching at Salisbury Elementary. So we have continued with initial training for all teachers. We have continued with coaching and feedback sessions throughout this year. And all educators who had not yet participated in one of those trainings have done so by this point. From that, we've seen some interest from teachers in other schools as well. So a group of educators from Salisbury went over to a Newbury faculty meeting to sort of share their experiences co-teaching. So we have some more interest in expanding that across the elementary school. So in terms of some impact of the work that we've been doing, both in supporting curriculum implementation and then as in co-teaching, we once again see with mid-year iReady growth that there's greater growth in co-taught classrooms than we have in classrooms that are not co-taught. We did see with mathematics benchmarks that we have lower growth than in a typical year with the new curriculum, which is there is usually some sort of implementation dip when trying something new. So I'm hopeful that we're going to continue to support the implementation of this, make sure that teachers are feeling prepared and using the materials the way that they're intended, and that we're going to see that sort of dip come back up and have some greater growth by the end of the school year. Let's see. We had, although we haven't shared formally because we've just received the district review, we did have some preliminary data from the district review that shows that middle and high ratings in across all grade levels in productivity and instructional learning formats and student engagement as measured by a tool called CLASS. So when they were doing classroom observations as part of that district review process, those were 3 areas that were highlighted. We've still been working hard on supporting writing instruction at the elementary schools, and this is the first year that we've done formal data collection, and the mid-year benchmark is showing that students are making progress in idea development and in conventions between the first and the mid-year benchmark, and there will be a 3rd benchmark before the end of the year as well. So if we look back to those student groups, students with low income and students with disabilities, we are seeing some progress in pockets, both in growth and achievement for those students. So our accountability data does reveal progress for our lowest performing student groups in ELA. In non-high school mathematics, so that's 3 through 8, students in this group met achievement and growth targets. But we have some inconsistencies in improvement of those targeted student groups based on grade span and discipline as well. What we did see this year is, and you heard this in my presentation earlier in the fall about accountability, is that we did see a decline in achievement across all academic areas at the high school level. So we are certainly working on strengthening Tier 1 instruction, but really actively working to change the perception that many students and many families and some educators even have the MCAS doesn't count anymore following the passage of question 2. The state did see a reduction in the percentage of students, or not the percentage of students, saw a reduction in student groups that made progress towards their goals in the accountability data. So that's something that we're still working hard at. In terms of movement forward, we are after June 30th, we'll no longer have the evidence-based programming grant, which has been supporting co-teaching practices. So we are using funds from this year to provide some training through a train the trainer model, so that each elementary school is going to have multiple educators who are going to be able to provide that initial training to any new educators who come into the school. We're going to continue with formal data collection on benchmark grading assessments, and it's not just the collection of the data, but it's then educators getting together and discussing the data and talking about instructional moves that are necessary based on the student data. And then also we are going to continue to focus on effective implementation of big ideas in mathematics beyond the first year. We always have a very strong implementation plan in year one, and sometimes we tend to move on to other things, and we need to sort of keep mathematics, secondary mathematics in that focus. And so then this is it for updates, and next year we'll have a presentation of a new Student Opportunity Act plan. Any questions?
I don't have questions, but I just wanted to thank you for all your work on this, because we get no money from the Student Opportunity Act, basically, and yet you have to go through this plan every single year. And I'm sure that's an exercise in frustration, but I do appreciate you pulling it together. It is nice to have all this in one place, and you are appreciated, even if it's a futile exercise in some ways.
Although, and I say this to Brian sometimes, that it is an opportunity to highlight the work that educators are doing and the work that students are doing. So even though we don't get any funds, otherwise, if I didn't look at it as an opportunity for that,
We just thank Desi for this opportunity.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you, Desi, for this opportunity.
And also, I know that a couple of years ago, when co-teaching started, everybody was running away from it, except for Pine Grove. And now you see most of Salisbury, if not all of Salisbury, and now Newbury wants to engage. So you said if you started it, they will come, and I think it's happening.
Yep, and I think it speaks to the importance of a multi-year sort of grant as well, that they're continuing that support. But yeah, I should say all of Pine Grove teachers have been trained in co-teaching, and it's happening in classrooms there as well. All of Salisbury teachers, it's ingrained in the culture there now as well. And I would say about half of Newbury staff has already participated in the training, because as long as it was offered to Salisbury first, we've been able to pull other educators into it. So we're working to see what can we do before June 30th to get everybody up and going.
So if nothing else, at least that has been almost accomplished.
Yes, yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Desi, for the opportunity.
Can I ask along that same line, is there anything at the middle school and high school, not for whatever, but one of my children was in a co-taught high school history class last year, and it was a fantastic experience for him.
Oh, great. Yeah, so we do have some teachers who have participated in this training, and then we have had the model too of having 2 licensed educators in a classroom. And it kind of varies in implementation, but it can be a powerful experience for students and for educators, whether or not they have been. So I'm glad to hear that was a positive.
Thank you, Anna. The next item is the monthly report of the superintendent of schools. The superintendent is going to provide his report.
So the first thing on my report, just to give you a quick heads up, you remember we shared with you several months ago now, I don't know how long ago, that board docs, which you're looking at now on the screen, is going away. And so Diligent is who now owns board docs. Their updated version is called Diligent Community, and it was nothing like this. And when we did some demos, it was more challenging than anything else. So we worked with a company called Boardable, excuse me, who primarily did private boards, and they saw this as an opportunity, knowing other districts and towns would be coming off of board docs, and so developed a public site, which was the piece that was missing. And so we are under contract through May, we think. I still don't know the exact date it will disappear. So my guess is we will be posting the agenda again in May in board docs. But then I'd like to make sure that by then we're set up to also have it so that you can log into the boardable version by then. So tonight I just wanted to give you a quick viewing of what this looks like. So on Boardable, you are going to have an account that is synced with your Google, your Triton email is a Google account, and so it's single sign-on. So all you're going to do is come down here to the site, and you're going to click Google. Likely your Chrome has saved profiles, you click that or sign into Google, and it will sign you in. So this is the board view. There is a lot in here that we have not tapped into yet. And actually, this is scaled very small on that screen. I'm here for you. So this, again, I mean, there's polling and surveys. There is a lot of information that we'll be able to utilize as we figure it out in the years ahead. We're still trying to get a snippet of what your login will look like versus what, this is what, when Deborah and I log in, see, because there's all kinds of settings. When we go to meetings, we can see, so tonight's meeting, Deborah built the agenda for tonight. And this is on the back end, but this is what you would see. So when you're logged in, when you go to the agenda, similar to what you saw previously, I mean, you have the same level of information. Any documents that are included as agenda items are here. The nice thing is that it actually gives you a PDF annotator. So for someone who is a note taker, you go into a document, you know, if you're reviewing the agenda ahead of time, you can literally go right in here and annotate and take notes right on it. This would be your login. Very slow tonight. It also, when you click on an agenda item, it allows you, it's not showing me notes, it allows you, going very slowly, on an agenda item here on the screen, you could take your own notes. Don't forget to ask Brian a question about this at the meeting on Tuesday or Wednesday. So I think it's much cleaner. It's generally very quick when it's not evening internet speeds. So that's generally what you'll see. If you would prefer, you don't need to. The only thing you would need in there is if you're going into an executive session, right? If there's something that's not for public consumption, or you like to use those notes, or you like to annotate a PDF. This is what the public site will look like, or does look. This is the public site. So similar information from board docs, all that same information, contact. And then it'll be passed, it'll say all meetings, future meetings. There's no current future meetings showing. And then also the policy manual is in here. They're working through some tweaks. It's basically a running narrative, and then over here on the right or on the left, it has the ability to click and hyperlink right to specific. This isn't, if you can see my cursors here, it's not scrolling, so they have a fix for that by early next week. So that's the kind of the quick drive through. Again, it would be an opportunity where you don't need to log in. You'd be able to go to the public page for 95% of what you do, but then you would have the ability to log in with developing minutes. Minute approvals can all happen through here, so whoever is the chosen one to be the secretary, can't wait to see the fight next month. Right, would be Deborah can develop the minutes, push them through here. It would go to you within your portal to review, approve. Once they're approved, they post. And then for meetings, the way this will work is, you remember on board docs, now you go up to the top here, and there's this little drop down with all the different groups. In Boardable, it's just a group. So, and we can't change the name of that. We tried to have them change that to committees, but it's just groups. So for upcoming, if we go to past meetings, they actually imported everything. You can see there's 45 pages of past meetings. So all of our past, anything that was in board docs is now in here. The minutes are attached as a PDF just because they weren't developed here, but you can go through the entirety of the agendas are in here. Normally, once a meeting happens that's built out in board docs, the minutes would be here, the agenda would be here, and we could click a link to show you the meeting video. But again, the meetings are by group. So where you had the committees in the top right over here, you're going to have groups. So the school committee, all the school councils, subcommittees, building committee. So this was just a quick, gradual release of responsibility and slow and steady The goal is we still do some paper packets for individuals, but for those interested, the nice thing, if you ever decided you wanted to, if I go here, if I go back over here. So if you were viewing a meeting and where it says board packet, you click the board packet and it will pull the entirety of the packet as one PDF, so you could open one big PDF, you could print pieces that you wanted to. So again, hopefully not, no comment. So the goal here is no paper, no paper. But yeah, I don't know if anyone has any quick questions. The goal tonight was just to get you eyes on. Between now and May, we have another, Brian is our account rep. Deborah and I have another meeting with him to go over. You won't have to go, you're not going to get a registration email or any of that. We'll just be able to say, okay, go to the site, click on the Google button, sign in with your Triton account, and you'll have all the right permissions. We're figuring that all out to make sure it's set. We'll give you the go, and then you can go play, and then hopefully again, we will in May, because as the whole April agenda is in here. It's just not showing up on the public site for some reason. So, any questions there? Cool. So the rest of my report, Linda talked about the drop-in sessions, so we have those meetings confirmed. Those will all be virtual. We'll put those on the calendar and get that information out to folks. Budget advocacy, just put the note here with the weekly scoop with the soup and also the written narrative. I've had a lot of feedback, people asking how they can get engaged in advocating. So sent out the written advocacy or written testimony to the North Shore Roundtable. I've got other superintendents taking pieces and shipping it off, so hopefully there's some progress there. SQM survey update says live on the dashboard. It was. It's not anymore. So as Ann and I were looking through it, there was some weird, how did we perform here last year and here this year? Just some weird discrepancies. So there are definitely errors, and I'm not going to go into details. There's some data sets that are missing that factor into the overall ratings. And so I said, so is it going to stay live? And they're like, yes, it'll stay live. And I'm like, can we have it not stay live? And so they were able to take that down. I'll let you know when that goes live again. Building committee update I added here because we forgot to add it to the general agenda. But just to note that we have, as of yesterday, an approved designer, Doran Whittier, out of Newburyport, designed Pine Grove School. Rich has worked with them, the specific team at the Cosentino Middle in Haverhill, and so they will be our designer. They are slated, we will work now on a contract with them, going to do a planning meeting next week to get everything set up, and then we have a building committee on the 23rd, 2 weeks from tomorrow, and the whole team will be there. The designer, OPM, full building committee, and we will officially be off to the races. And final thing there is the personnel action report. Certainly happy to answer any questions you have.
Anybody have any questions for Brian? Can I have a motion to receive and file a monthly report of the superintendent of schools for April 2026?
Make motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? FY25 financial audit. The finance subcommittee has received and reviewed the fiscal year 2025 audit. Dr. Poor is going to go over the highlights for the full committee.
Sure. So for the financial audit, the overall audit, I think it was my first one, but it went really well. The auditors spent a lot of time here, but thankfully the report was favorable. For the single audit this year, they did choose the school lunch program, and there was one corrective action, and that was simply a decision was made last year to reclassify $50,000 of food service employee health care to the food service account, but it did not have the appropriate backup documentation that the auditors would have liked to see. So their recommendation to us was that basically the district invoice food services annually for whatever the agreed upon amount is, broken down into the 12 months of the fiscal year, and we charge it off accordingly. So We've gone ahead and done that retroactively for the current year for 140,000. And then as we talked about during the budget season, 200,000 for next year they've already been invoiced for. And the goal, of course, over time is to get to the point where it's 100% self-sustaining. So hopefully we're not too far away from that. But that is essentially the annual audit. Earlier in the year, in the summer actually, we did the student activity account audit. This year we decided to begin with the high school and focus on the most recent complete school year because a new administrative assistant at the high school had taken over, and she had done a really good job kind of getting a handle on those things. So we felt that that was in kind of the best space, and then based on how that audit panned out, we could then make changes to the middle and elementary schools accordingly. And with those results, we have sort of pivoted to use a software called Account Tree, and that software just simply acts as a kind of high-tech check register, showing, you know, simple deposits, withdrawals, just of student activity account funds. So it's keeping that completely separate, but rather than having, you know, a different spreadsheet for every school and a different spreadsheet for every club, everything kind of lives in this one spot. And it's easily accessible by our accountant, and Kevin is able to do a bank reconciliation with it every month and reconcile it with what's in Infinite Visions, our accounting system. And we're also able to give our auditors access to that system as well. They have their own credentials, so when they come next year, they're actually going to do the elementary schools and the middle school next year. And it will be a lot easier for them to do it all in one place, since that money is supposed to follow the kids from kindergarten to graduation. We actually have a mechanism to make that happen now. So something good came out of it. Any questions on the audit? The actuarial review of our OPEB liability is also in there. This past year was a full review, so next year will be a little bit, they tell me it's more brief in between, but there's some great reading if you're interested.
Anybody have any?
As we have in the past, if you ever want the auditors to come and present, they would gladly come and take some of your time. The Finance Subcommittee did spend a little more, a deeper dive into this.
I think Mr. Poor and the auditors are doing very well.
The auditors, I understand. The actuaries, when they talk, I'm just confused.
Could I have a motion to receive and file the FY25 financial audit?
Make a motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? The next item is the policy review cycle. The Policy and Advocacy Subcommittee has finished their review cycle of policy sections G and H. The superintendent is going to provide a high-level review of the additions, deletions, and edits.
So my high-level review is you have sections G and H in front of you. There is just the H is 3 policies. Obviously, G is one of the largest, so this was a 2-policy year. So in the PDF, any of the policies that are linked are actually a link over to our existing policy manual on board docs. Those are proposed being cut out. Those are policies that existed in Triton only, are not part of the MASC manual. Anything that's being added or edited is actually noted in that PDF, and then on the agenda there's a link to a Google Drive that has all of those edits, and right in the name it writes proposed edit, new policy, or no change. So those are all listed there for your review.
Is there any discussion?
I just want to say I really like policy GBEE. It's the officially called personnel use of technology. I know it's been part of our standard operating protocols, just how communications should happen and making sure that everything's documented. But I think it's really nice to have it sort of front and public as well, just so that, you know, it's out there. If someone has a question, here's how it's happening, right? This is the way it is. So I really like this edition in particular. The rest of them are wonderful as well, but but this one I was like, I opened it up and I was like, yes, this is great.
Yeah,
Not
so
that I ever get excited about policies, but yes.
It morphed from the acceptable use policy, which is where it started in the model, to then four. It's like empowered digital use. I forget the other ones, and there's 4 separate. And I think the staff piece got a little lost. There's staff with social media, but this clearly MASC came out and said, okay, we need it's a personnel policy, right?
Yeah.
This is an HR document here, and so it does a much better job clarifying that. So, agreed. So the recommendation is a first reading tonight, second reading in May, and then it shall be adopted.
We have a motion to approve the proposed changes to policy sections G and H as a first reading.
Make the motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? The next item is the transfer to stabilization funds. The memo from Dr. Poor is attached to the agenda, and I'll ask him to provide a high-level overview of this request, which was referred to us with a recommendation from the Finance Subcommittee.
Yep, just over the course of the year, we've had some pretty significant repairs here at the regional campus that we have had to absorb. John Skonecki and the maintenance team here are doing their best to keep the lights on and keep the building in good working order until hopefully new or renovated comes down the pike. But these are the big ones that came up so far this year. Some of them earlier in the year, and we kind of waited. But right now, all in, we're looking at $78,916.51. These bills have already been paid out of the general fund, so we would be asking to reclassify those invoices to the stabilization.
Can I just add a little bit of history? So in the past, well, not too distant past, we didn't have a stabilization fund, so we couldn't do this. But in the past, we waited till the end and have seen if we've had a little bit of capacity. We are changing the approach. Rich has done a great job this year of encumbering accurately well ahead of time, so that rather than at the end of the year scrambling to make ends meet, if anything, over encumbering. So at the end of the year, maybe we assumed a little too high and we have a little more left. So we could have taken the approach of waiting until June and see if we could cover this. We're now taking the approach of it's time to, if there's a balance left somewhere, this is a stabilization account expense, and then that would filter through to excess and efficiency, so we can begin to build that reserve back, since we have, in essence, depleted it. So.
Does anybody have any questions? I'd like to make a motion to approve the proposed reclassification of capital expenditures from the general fund to the stabilization fund for expenses incurred for regional campus capital repairs as recommended by the Finance Subcommittee.
Second? Right, do you make a motion?
Yeah, I guess I made a motion. Yeah.
Okay, I'm seconding your motion.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Job descriptions. The Personnel and Negotiation Subcommittee is recommending the approval of 2 revised job descriptions. The superintendent will speak to this request.
Okay, superintendent will. So I'll give you a break. Usually it's me talking, and then. So there are 2 job descriptions before you tonight. The first is Facilities and Operations Manager. This is a change in title only, so this is John Skonecki. We've talked about his expanded role. He is far more than just facilities. He assists Rich with transportation and any other operational matter. So salary range, all of those items are as is. It's just a matter of shifting the title. And then the district accountant, I don't know if you want to add more detail or color to this, Rich, but as you know, in the budget, we are cutting one of the business office clerks. And so this expands the role of the accountant. But I will say, you know, in working, Rich has worked with our current accountant, who has announced her retirement on the personal report tonight, I believe, right? And so in doing that, we believe with this description, it is a single full-time job able to be done, but this job description is updated just to reflect that additional scope.
Anybody have any questions?
Yeah.
Just making sure I did okay.
Exactly right.
You want to make a motion? I'll make a motion to approve the job descriptions as presented for approval by the Personnel and Negotiation Subcommittee.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? The next item is the subcommittee reports, policy and advocacy. Erin?
Policy and advocacy met tonight to talk about the proposed changes that we presented to the committee just a moment ago. We also had a couple other discussions on some areas that we would like to bring forward at future meetings, and those will be coming up. As of right now, the next scheduled meeting is a tentative schedule at this point in time. We don't have anything that's readily on the agenda. We anticipate there's a possibility of one item that'll be available, but it will be a game time decision as to whether or not the meeting is going to be held at that point.
Thank you. Personnel negotiations.
We
Matthew?
do not have any upcoming meetings. We are currently on our summer break.
Finance Subcommittee. Owen?
We met last week, and you heard about the audit already and stabilization, but budget-wise, still in a solid spot. Like Brian mentioned, Rich is looking towards releasing encumbrances rather than rushing to close gaps. And our next meeting is Thursday, April 30th at 3:30.
And the executive session, we don't have a quorum, so we will not be having that, but I am going to request the four of us here if we could have it Monday evening, and I will have a Zoom call Monday evening. Huh?
You want to do a meeting Monday, right? Zoom.
So that
So are
we,
you good with Monday via Zoom?
Monday evening, so that we can vote on.
What time?
7? 6?
Can I get back to you?
Yeah.
There's a lot of calendars to check.
Dave, like a morning time, I'm assuming it's a fairly quick meeting. So if it's a Zoom, it could be at 7:30 in the morning if that works for people's schedules.
Does
I'm up at 4:30, so
do
if you
Monday
guys are ready.
Monday during the day?
I could do Monday morning.
All right, let Caitlin get back to me and I'll email the rest. I have to also check with Mr. Lees. I would just like to say thank you to the negotiating team who spent a lot of hours and time negotiating with our teachers and IAs. And I appreciate everything that everybody does. I know that it's a lot of work for all of us as well as our administration over here. As I always say, it takes a village, and I appreciate everything that everybody does. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you and have a nice evening.